I'm sorry. Last frame that you described are the most difficult to get the vaccine, because they don't go to reliable sources, to verified sources to get information. They usually go to sources that justify what they're already thinking and feeling about getting the vaccine. And those are really the hardest to reach at all.
One thing that really delayed my children from getting the vaccine was this thing around infertility, which a lot of young people are still grappling with. Can you speak to that, Yolanda?
Absolutely.
How you've had to approach that? And if Dr. Sweeny, you can really enlighten our viewers on this infertility question.
Yeah, so that was actually a question that I grappled with before taking the vaccine. It was the question that I wanted answered before deciding to take the vaccine. And I got the question answered. I was in a call with a group of faith leaders, and we were speaking to doctors, and someone brought it up, and it was confirmed that the vaccine does not affect in any way reproductive health, that many pregnant women, as well as women who are wanting to get pregnant, had taken the vaccine and they were fine. And so that gave me the confidence that I needed to move forward. But I know that for a lot of women, young women, that is a question mark for them. And it was a question mark for me. And I decided to go ahead and take the vaccine. And I'm pretty sure I could have, I'm not ready to have a baby right now. But I'm pretty sure if I wanted to, I could.
The thing that we need to remember about COVID is that 2 years ago, we couldn't have this conversation because COVID was not there. So it's a novel virus, and the longest we've been able to follow it is less than 2 years. Novel means new. This is a new virus. We have to follow it for years to know what some of the effects will be.
Can I just jump in here for a second? The folks that I have spoken to, right, most of the younger folks around me have gotten it. In fact, when I didn't get it right away, my kids were like, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer? And I was like, really, you're vaccinated. How can I be an anti-vaxxer, right? But the conversations, right, with folks that I've had in their 40s and 50s, they weren't waiting for God to tell them, but they were very skeptical of the information. And they are because it is more novel, right? They don't trust what's being said so far. And they cited things like the Johnson & Johnson with the talcum powder. So, because they're not going back to Tuskegee, they're pulling things that are way more recent. And there is a justified fear of being used for, if it's not for medical experimentation, then it's just for profit. Right? Because Johnson & Johnson wasn't about experimentation. They were taking shortcuts and putting things in baby powder, the talcum powder. There was the sterilization of Puerto Rican women back in the 60s. There was sterilization of women on welfare that was way more recent in states like Louisiana. And, so there are these things that are also making people question getting the vaccination. And, I know folks who absolutely refuse to. They're like, they're going to have to tie me down and vaccinate me. But there are also the ones, as Yolanda was talking about, who don't use traditional doctors. They use traditional doctors. They don't use more of the white coats, right? For lack of a better term. So I think there's like this cross of folks who, if there was trust in the government, they might trust the information more. But because they don't trust the government, because they don't trust the information that's come out in the last year and a half, because it's changed and changed and changed. Now we know it changes because it's new, but then they're like, well, if I did what you said in the beginning, where would I be now?
Though, to respond to that, I guess for me, this whole don't trust, I think of healthcare professionals and the training that goes into it, the investment and the education that goes into it.
They trust them.
But why is it? Yeah, so I'm wondering, Dr. Sweeny, are people trusting medical professionals. I mean, I have friends who tell me that I need to read because the doctors are bought. And I'm like, what? How is that possible? How is that possible? So can you respond to that kind of thinking around COVID?
It's not just around COVID. It is around many things. So people have changed from generation to generation. It used to be that doctors were held in the highest esteem. And now that's just not the case. It's a different generation. People are not as trusting, and some of it is well deserved. I mean, when you look at the opioid crisis, somebody was writing a lot of prescriptions for opioids.
Very true.
Why were they doing it? And so some of the distrust is valid.
You know what I'm thinking as we're talking about this? We are in a time of a lot of change. There's a lot of things, as you talk about mistrust, that's what happens when so many things are changing. I think we're in a time of general change and mistrust. I think that this has been a really traumatic experience for all of us. We don't know what to think. We don't know what to believe, and we don't know what to trust. And I think that some of the behaviors that we're seeing and it are quite normal when you've experienced all the change and turbulence that has come into our lives. We don't know where to go. And as Black people that have experienced, have a lot of reason to distrust, I think that you find it probably even more prevalent within our communities. And so what we need are trusting people. And then when we think about the Roll Up Your Sleeves campaign, trusting places that we can go to, that we can have these conversations with people that we trust.
I will say thank you, Phyllis. That was a wonderful wrap. And Yolanda, is there anything you want to say to this audience before we close the show?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. So, I grew up in a Caribbean household where we really feared government. We really feared exposure. And we really feared just sort of everything sort of outside of our community. And in a lot of ways that provided us protection and comfort and certainty. But on the other end, we lost out on a lot. And it took, my experience in having and accessing many, different opportunity outside of that space allowed me to be sitting in this seat today, speaking to you all. And so, the one thing that I do want to share, if we're talking to an audience or folks who are still on the fence, not sure if they want to get vaccinated, this isn't a pressure point that you need to do this today, though we would really love that for your own health and safety. But just to understand the facts, right? Understand that 99% of individuals who have died from COVID-19 were not vaccinated. It's not about politics, but this is about the preservation of your life and the life of, those who you're bringing in the world. We mentioned earlier, about child rearing, the vaccine. The vaccine also protects your unborn child, right? And in the birthing process and post-birth as well. And so this is about preservation of Black life. And, that's what the Roll Up Your Sleeves campaign is about. And if you want more information about the campaign, you can find us at rollupursleevesny.org. I hope to see you in the field. I hope to see you in the neighborhoods, in the city, hopefully at a vaccination site. But if not, we can just chat and talk near the site.
We couldn't find a better person to talk about this the way that you have here this evening. So thank you so much, Yolanda. So happy that you are in the trenches getting the work done. And thank you so much, Dr. Sweeny. You're like a Brooklyn Savvy regular. So that's all the time we have for this episode. We will see you next time on Brooklyn Savvy.